A date that changed everything. Jason Reynolds checked his reflection in the glass door one more time before entering the Emerald City Brewhouse. His navy blue sweater and dark jeans felt too casual, then too formal, then casual again. At 34, he should have been past this kind of nervousness. But blind dates had a way of making even the most confident person feel like an awkward teenager. His colleague, Kay, had been pestering him for months about meeting someone. "You work too much, man. When's the last time you went on an actual date?" Brad had asked during their lunch break at the investment firm where they both worked. Jason had mumbled something about being focused on the upcoming merger, but the truth was simpler and more pathetic. He was lonely. The coffee shop was bustling with the usual Seattle crowd. People hunched over laptops, students studying in groups, couples sharing pastries. Jason spotted an empty table near the window and claimed it quickly. He ordered a black coffee, then immediately regretted not getting something more interesting. What if she thought he was boring? He was scrolling through his phone, pretending to read emails, when he heard her voice, "Jason." He looked up and felt his heart skip. She was stunning in an understated way. Auburn hair pulled back in a loose ponytail, wearing a forest green cardigan over a simple white dress. But it was her eyes that caught him. Hazel eyes that seemed to be studying him with an intensity that made him shift in his seat. "Yes. Hi. Emily." He stood up quickly, nearly knocking over his coffee. Smooth. Really smooth. She smiled, but there was something guarded in her expression. "That's me. Thanks for agreeing to this." "I know Brad can be pretty persistent. He means well," Jason said, pulling out her chair. "Can I get you something?" "I'll have a chai latte. Thanks." Small talk and big questions. The first 20 minutes passed in predictable first date territory. They talked about work. Jason explained what he did at the investment firm, though he found himself downplaying the long hours and high stress. Emily talked about her job coordinating programs for a nonprofit that helped homeless youth find job training and housing. "That must be really rewarding," Jason said, and meant it. "I imagine it's challenging too." "It is, but when you see a kid who's been sleeping in their car finally get their own place, or land their first real job, it makes everything worth it." Emily's face lit up when she talked about her work. Every person has a story, you know. Nobody ends up homeless because life was easy. Jason found himself genuinely interested, asking questions, wanting to know more. There was something about Emily that felt different from other women he'd dated. She was real, unguarded in a way. That made his carefully constructed professional persona feel like a costume. They were discussing her favorite success story. A young man who'd gone from living in a shelter to getting accepted to community college, when Emily's expression shifted. She set down her cup and looked at him directly. "Can I ask you something personal?" "Sure," Jason said, though his stomach tightened with sudden anxiety. "Do you remember me?" The question that changed everything, the question hung in the air between them. Jason felt confusion wash over him like cold water. He studied her face more carefully, searching for something familiar, some spark of recognition, but found nothing. "I'm sorry, I don't understand. Have we met before?" Emily's smile was sad, knowing 16 years ago. Lincoln High School. "We were there at the same time." Jason's mind raced backward. Lincoln High. He'd gone there for all 4 years, graduating in 2009. Those had been good years. Great years, actually. He'd been popular, played varsity basketball, dated cheerleaders, had a solid group of friends. Life had felt easy then, like everything was laid out perfectly in front of him. "I was there," he said carefully. "But I'm sorry I don't remember you." "Were we in classes together?" "A few," Emily said quietly. "But we weren't exactly running in the same circles." "You were Jason Reynolds, basketball star, prom king, always surrounded by friends. I was Emily Carter. It's a quiet girl who ate lunch in the library and wore the same 3 outfits on rotation because my mom was working 2 jobs to keep us afloat." Jason felt something cold settle in his chest. Emily Carter. He searched his memory, but came up empty. There had been hundreds of students at Lincoln. He couldn't possibly remember everyone. "I'm really sorry," he said honestly. "There were a lot of people at that school." "There were," Emily agreed. and most of them didn't notice I existed, which was fine mostly. I kept my head down, got good grades, stayed out of everyone's way. But you, Jason, you noticed me once, and what you did that day, I've never forgotten it. The memory he lost, Jason wanted to stand up, to leave. To escape this conversation that felt like it was heading somewhere he wasn't ready to go, but something kept him frozen in his seat. Maybe it was the way Emily was looking at him. Not with anger or accusation, but with something more complicated. Curiosity, maybe? Or the simple need to be heard. It was December of our junior year, Emily continued, her voice soft but steady. Right before winter break, there was this big winter formal dance that everyone was talking about. I wasn't going, obviously. Couldn't afford the ticket, didn't have anyone to go with, didn't have anything appropriate to wear, but I was working that night anyway, helping my mom clean offices downtown. Jason remembered that dance. It had been at some fancy hotel ballroom. His girlfriend at the time, Ashley, had worn a red dress that everyone talked about for weeks. I was taking the bus home around 11. Still in my work clothes, just wanting to get home and sleep. The bus stopped near the hotel where the dance was happening, and a bunch of kids from school got on. Your friends. The basketball team guys and their dates. Memory flickered. Jason remembered leaving that dance early because Ashley had gotten into some drama with another girl. They saw me, Emily said, her voice quieter now. Recognized me from school, and they started laughing, making comments about my clothes, asking if I was the cleaning lady. One of them, Tyler Chen, said something about how I probably couldn't afford the dance even if someone wanted to take me, which no one did. They all thought it was hilarious. Jason's stomach turned. He remembered Tyler, remembered the whole crew, remembered being the kind of person who thought cruel jokes were funny if they were clever enough. I just stared at the floor, trying to disappear, praying they'd get bored and leave me alone. And then you got on the bus. The act of kindness, you'd left the dance early. I heard someone say your girlfriend had ditched you for her ex. You looked angry, upset. And then you saw what was happening? Saw your friends laughing at me. Jason held his breath, afraid of what came next. He told them to shut up. Just like that. Shut up, all of you. Leave her alone. They were shocked. Tyler tried to play it off as a joke, but you weren't having it. You said it's not funny. You're being jerks. And then you did something that confused me completely. Emily's eyes were bright, emotional, but not crying. You sat down next to me. Right there on the bus. In your expensive suit from the dance, you sat next to the cleaning lady's daughter and asked if I was okay. Asked if those idiots had been bothering me before you got there? Jason had no memory of this. None whatsoever. But he could picture himself doing it, could imagine the moment. I was too shocked to really respond. Just nodded and said I was fine. And you stayed sitting next to me for 3 more stops until you got off. Before you left, you turned to me and said, I'm sorry about them. You shouldn't have to deal with that. I hope you have a good night. And then you were gone. Coffee shop felt too warm. Jason's throat felt tight. Why are you telling me this? Emily took a breath. Because when Brad told me about you, described you as this successful guy who seemed lost and worked too much and kept everyone at arm's length, I wondered if you were the same person, if you remembered that night, if you remembered me. And when I walked in here and saw you looking so polished and perfect and alone, I knew you didn't. I'm sorry, Jason said, and the words felt inadequate. I'm sorry I don't remember. I'm sorry your high school experience was like that. I wish I could say I was always the person who stood up for people, but honestly, I probably wasn't. That night might have been the exception, not the rule. I know, Emily said simply. But here's the thing, Jason. That one moment, that one time you chose kindness over loyalty to your friends, it mattered. It made me realize that people are more than their worst moments. That even the popular kids who seemed untouchable were just people trying to figure things out. It's part of why I do the work I do now. Because I learned that everyone deserves to be seen, to be treated with dignity. Even when society tells us some people matter less than others. When everything changed, Emily took another sip of her chai latte, now lukewarm, and leaned back in her chair. Jason could see she had more to say, and he found himself wanting to hear it. even though every word felt like a mirror being held up to a version of himself he'd forgotten existed. "Let me tell you what that night meant to me," Emily said softly, "because I don't think you understand how much one small act of decency can change someone's life." Jason nodded, unable to find words. I was 16 years old, and I felt invisible. Not in a dramatic teenage angst kind of way. I mean truly invisible. My dad had left when I was 8. My mom worked as a housekeeper during the day and cleaned offices at night. We lived in a tiny apartment on the edge of the school district. I qualified for free lunch, which meant everyone knew I was poor. I shopped at thrift stores and pretended my worn-out clothes were a fashion choice. She smiled, but there was pain behind it. High school is brutal when you don't fit in. I wasn't bullied in the traditional sense. No one shoved me into lockers or spread rumors about me. I was just ignored, dismissed. I could walk through the hallways and not a single person would make eye contact with me. It was like I was a ghost haunting Lincoln High School. The weight of invisibility, I'd convinced myself it didn't matter. Emily continued. I told myself I was there to learn, to get good grades, to get into college, and build a better life. The social stuff was just noise. But the truth is, it hurt. Every single day, it hurt to be nobody. Jason felt a lump forming in his throat. He'd never thought about high school that way. For him, it had been for years of fun, friendship, and feeling like he owned the world. He'd never considered what it was like for the people outside his circle. That night on the bus, after your friends had their laugh at my expense, I wanted to disappear. I wanted to melt into the seat and never exist again. And then you got on, and I thought it was going to get worse. I thought you'd join in, make it even more humiliating. I didn't, Jason said quietly. No, you didn't. You defended me. And more than that, you sat with me. Do you know what that meant? The most popular guy in school, the one everyone wanted to be friends with, chose to sit next to the invisible girl. You treated me like I mattered. Emily's voice grew stronger, more animated. I went home that night and cried. Not sad tears, but something else. Relief, maybe, or hope. Because if Jason Reynolds could see me as a human being worth defending, maybe I wasn't as invisible as I thought. Maybe I did matter. The ripple effect that moment changed something in me, Emily said. I started participating more in class. I joined the creative writing club. I made a couple of friends, other quiet kids who'd been hiding in the shadows like me. I stopped eating lunch alone in the library and started eating in the cafeteria. I was still poor, still wearing thrift store clothes, still the odd one out, but I stopped apologizing for existing. Jason listened, amazed. All because of one bus ride? All because someone showed me kindness when I needed it most. You probably went home that night and forgot about it within an hour. But I carried it with me. When I applied to colleges, I wrote my essay about that night. About how one moment of human decency reminded me that I deserved to take up space in the world. Did you get in? Jason asked. To college? Emily grinned. Full scholarship to University of Washington. Graduated with honors. Got my master's in social work. And now I spend my days trying to be for other people what you were for me that night. Even though you don't remember it, it's a different perspective. I need to tell you something, Jason said, feeling vulnerable in a way he hadn't in years. That version of me you're describing, the one who stood up for you, I'm not sure he exists anymore. Or maybe he never really did. You caught me on a good night, maybe. A night when I was already angry at my friends, already feeling like the whole popular kid thing was hollow. Emily tilted her head, studying him. What do you mean? I mean, I wasn't a hero, Emily. I was just another kid going along with the crowd most of the time. Yeah, I defended you that night, but how many other times did I laugh at jokes about other people? How many times did I stand by while someone got hurt? I was part of the problem, and one moment of decency doesn't erase that. I know, Emily said simply. I'm not trying to make you into something you weren't. I'm just telling you that your one moment of decency mattered to me. That's all. People are complicated. We can be cruel and kind, selfish and generous, often in the same day. The question is, which version of ourselves do we choose to nurture? The years between Jason leaned forward. Tell me about after high school. What happened to you? Emily's face softened. I worked hard. Really hard. College was amazing and terrifying. I was surrounded by people who'd gone to private schools, who traveled abroad, who talked about things I'd never heard of. But I learned. I grew. I found my passion in helping people who were struggling, people who felt invisible like I had. After I got my master's degree, I worked at a homeless shelter for 3 years. That's where I realized how many people end up on the streets simply because they had one bad break. One moment where life kicked them down and nobody was there to help them back up. It made me think about that bus ride again, about how different my life might have been if you hadn't shown me that kindness. You would have been fine, Jason said. You're clearly strong, determined. Maybe, Emily acknowledged, but maybe not. Maybe I would have stayed invisible, stayed small, never believed I deserved better. We'll never know. What I do know is that your kindness planted a seed, and I've spent my life trying to water that same seed in other people. Jason's confession. I need to be honest with you, Jason said, his voice rough with emotion. The last 16 years of my life have been about building a perfect resume. College at Stanford, MBA from Northwestern, fast track at the investment firm. I make more money than I ever dreamed of as a kid. I have a nice condo, a nice car, nice everything. And I'm miserable. Emily didn't look surprised. Why? Because none of it means anything. I spend 60 hours a week making rich people richer. I can't remember the last time I did something that actually mattered. I've dated plenty of women, but never let anyone get close enough to see that I'm empty inside. I've become exactly what I looked like I was in high school. Shiny on the surface, hollow underneath. That's why Brad set this up, isn't it? Emily asked. He saw you struggling, told me I needed to meet someone who'd remind me what's important. I thought he was just trying to set me up with another corporate type. Someone safe and predictable. Jason laughed softly. He didn't tell me you were you. Did he know? About our history? I told him, Emily admitted. After he first suggested it, I said I'd think about it, and then I told him about Lincoln High School, about that night. He said you needed to hear this story, that you'd forgotten who you could be, the question that mattered. So this whole date was a setup. Jason asked, but he wasn't angry. If anything, he felt grateful. Not exactly. I could have said no. Brad gave me your number and told me to decide for myself. I spent 2 weeks thinking about it. Looking you up online, seeing your perfect LinkedIn profile, your carefully curated social media. You looked successful and lonely, just like Brad said. And I wondered if that boy from the bus was still in there somewhere, buried under all the success. And Jason asked, "Is he?" Emily smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes. I think so. I think he's the part of you that agreed to this blind date even though you wanted to cancel. The part that's been listening to me for the last hour, with genuine interest instead of polite tolerance. The part that just admitted he's not happy, even though that probably cost you something to say. Jason felt something crack open in his chest, something he'd kept locked tight for years. I don't know how to be that person anymore. If I ever really was, maybe you don't have to know, Emily suggested. Maybe you just have to start. Small acts of kindness, remember? They add up. A new beginning. They talked for another hour. Jason told Emily about his parents, both successful lawyers who'd expected him to follow in their footsteps. About how he'd chosen investment banking as a compromise, a way to make them proud while carving his own path. About how he'd built this perfect life that felt like a prison. Emily told him about her mom, who'd passed away 2 years ago from cancer. About how hard it had been to watch her decline, knowing all her years of hard work had been about giving Emily opportunities. About the guilt she sometimes felt for having the life her mother never got to live. She was so proud of you, Jason said. I can tell. She came to my grad school graduation in a wheelchair, so weak she could barely sit up, but she was there. She told me I'd become exactly who I was meant to be, that all the hard years had been worth it. She was right. When the coffee shop staff started cleaning up around them, they realized they'd been there for over 3 hours. Outside, the Seattle drizzle had turned into proper rain. They stood under the awning, neither quite ready to say goodbye. I'm glad I came tonight, Emily said. Even though I wasn't sure I should, I'm glad you did too. This wasn't what I expected, but it's exactly what I needed. Jason hesitated, then continued. Can I see you again? Not because Brad set it up, but because I want to. Because talking to you tonight made me feel more alive than I have in years. Emily considered this, and Jason held his breath. One condition, anything. Next time, no coffee shops. There's a community garden near my apartment where I volunteer on weekends. Come help me plant vegetables. Get your hands dirty. Do something real. Can you handle that? Jason thought about his closet full of expensive suits, his carefully maintained image, the person he'd built himself into. Then he thought about the boy on the bus, who'd chosen kindness over cruelty and made his decision. What time should I be there? Getting his hands dirty, Jason showed up at the community garden the following Saturday, wearing old jeans and a faded t-shirt he dug out from the back of his closet. He felt self-conscious and underdressed, then realized that was the point. This wasn't about looking good. It was about showing up. Emily was already there, wearing dirt-stained overalls and a wide-brimmed hat, laughing with an elderly man about something. When she saw Jason, her face lit up in a way that made his heart skip. You came, she said, sounding genuinely pleased. I wasn't completely sure you would. Almost didn't, Jason admitted. But then I remembered what you said about small acts. Figured this was a start. The garden was beautiful, in a messy, organic way that his carefully maintained condo could never be. Raised beds full of vegetables, fruit trees along the fence, flowers attracting bees and butterflies, people of all ages working together, talking and laughing. This is amazing, Jason said. It's my favorite place in the city. Everyone here has a story. That's Mr. Patterson over there. He's 78 and grows the best tomatoes you've ever tasted. The woman with the purple hair is Diana. She's a chef who uses produce from here for a program feeding homeless folks. The kids playing by the compost bins are from the youth center where I used to work. We're teaching them where food actually comes from. For the next 4 hours, Jason dug holes, planted seedlings, spread mulch, and got thoroughly dirty. His back ached. His hands blistered. And he couldn't remember the last time he'd felt this good, learning to CI over the next 2 months. I agree. Jason and Emily fell into a pattern. Saturdays at the garden. Weeknights at the nonprofit where Emily worked, where Jason started volunteering his financial expertise to help with their budget. Sundays at a diner Emily loved, where they'd spend hours talking over coffee and pie. Tell me about a person at work who surprised you this week, Emily would ask. It became their ritual. She wanted him to practice seeing people, really seeing them. There's this guy in accounting, Dennis. I've walked past him every day for 5 years and never said more than hello. This week, I actually talked to him. Turns out he's supporting his sister and her 3 kids because her husband walked out. He works a second job on weekends. And here I was thinking he was just another boring accountant. What did you do? Emily asked. I talked to HR about getting him a raise. Found out he's been passed over for promotions because he's quiet, doesn't play the office politics game. So I made some noise. He's getting promoted next month. Emily reached across the table and squeezed his hand. That's not a small act. Jason, that's changing someone's life. I learned from the best, he said. The breaking point 3 months into whatever they were calling this relationship, Jason had a crisis. His firm landed a massive deal that would have made him partner, set him up financially for life. The catch was, it involved helping a corporation restructure in a way that would lay off 300 workers to maximize profit. He sat in the conference room, listening to his colleagues celebrate, and felt sick. That night, he showed up at Emily's apartment unannounced. She took one look at his face and pulled him inside. Talk to me, she said. He told her everything. The deal, the promotion, the money, the 300 people who'd lose their jobs right before the holidays. The fact that it was all legal, all standard practice, all part of the game he'd been playing for years. What do you want to do? Emily asked. I want to walk away. But that's crazy, right? This is everything I've worked for. Partnership, security, success. Is it? Emily challenged. Or is it everything you thought you were supposed to want? Jason looked at her, this woman who'd taken a bus ride 16 years ago and turned it into a life mission, who chose meaningful work over money every single day, who'd shown him what it meant to live with purpose. "I'm scared," he admitted. "If I'm not this person, the successful investment banker, then who am I?" Maybe you're the person who chooses people over profit, the one who stands up when something's wrong, the guy from the bus who told his friends to shut up and then sat with the lonely girl. Emily moved closer. Maybe you're the person who gets to decide what success actually means. The decision Monday morning, Jason walked into his boss's office and resigned. Turned down the partnership, the deal, all of it. His colleagues thought he'd lost his mind. His parents were disappointed. But for the first time in years, Jason felt like he could breathe. "What are you going to do?" Brad asked him on his last day. "I'm not sure yet. Emily's nonprofit needs help. I've been talking to some other organizations about using my skills to actually help people instead of just making money. We'll see." "For what it's worth," Brad said, "I'm proud of you. That's why I set you up with her, you know? I knew you needed someone who'd remind you who you really are." Jason started consulting for nonprofits, using his financial expertise to help organizations that were trying to make a difference. The money was a fraction of what he'd made before, but he loved the work. He helped a homeless shelter restructure their funding model, worked with a job training program to expand their services, used his business connections to connect people who needed help with people who could provide it, falling in love somewhere. Between the garden work and the nonprofit, volunteering and the endless conversations over diner coffee, Jason realized he'd fallen completely in love with Emily Carter. It wasn't dramatic or sudden. It was quiet and steady, like watching a sunrise. It was the way she laughed at his terrible jokes, the way she challenged him to be better while accepting who he was, the way she saw the best in people without ignoring their flaws, the way she made him want to be the person she believed he could be. 6 months after their first date, they were planting tomatoes in the community garden when Jason stopped working and just watched her. She was covered in dirt, hair escaping from her ponytail, completely in her element. "What?" she asked, noticing his stare. "I love you," he said, just like that. No plan, no perfect moment, just the truth. Emily's eyes filled with tears. Yeah, you're the best person I know. You make me want to be better. You remind me every day that life is about more than looking successful. It's about actually mattering, about seeing people and being seen, about choosing kindness over convenience." "I love you too," Emily said, her voice thick with emotion. "I fell in love with you the second time. Not the boy on the bus, but the man who showed up at the garden willing to start over. The one who wasn't afraid to admit he'd lost his way." They kissed there in the dirt. Surrounded by growing things and possibility, full circle a year later, Jason organized a fundraiser for Emily's nonprofit. He used every connection he'd made in his corporate life to bring in donations. The event raised enough money to expand their programs to serve twice as many young people. At the end of the night, standing in front of everyone, Jason told a story about a lonely investment banker who'd forgotten what mattered, about a woman who'd reminded him that one act of kindness could change everything, about second chances and choosing to see people. 16 years ago, I sat next to a girl on a bus and told some jerks to leave her alone. I forgot about it the next day, but she didn't. She carried that moment with her and built a life around the idea that everyone deserves dignity and kindness. She became the person I needed to meet when I'd lost my way. She saved me by reminding me of who I could be." Emily was crying. Half the room was crying. Which brings me to why we're really here tonight. Jason got down on one knee, right there in front of everyone, and pulled out a ring. "Emily Carter, you taught me that small acts of kindness can change the world. You showed me what it means to live with purpose. You made me believe that people can change, can become better versions of themselves. Will you marry me?" "Yes," Emily said through her tears. Yes. The life they built, they got married 9 months later in the community garden, surrounded by the people whose lives they'd touched. Mr. Patterson grew the flowers. Diana catered with help from the young people from the homeless program. It wasn't fancy or expensive, but it was real and beautiful and full of love. Jason never went back to investment banking. He built a consultancy helping nonprofits and social enterprises. Emily expanded her programs, helping hundreds of young people find their way. They bought a small house with a big yard where they could grow vegetables and host dinners for friends who became family.